Hello, everyone. On this webcast, what we wanted to focus on is what can you test with Certify? Because everybody knows Worksoft does an amazing job with SAP GUI, with Fiori. They use this with Salesforce. They tend to think about all the ERP apps. But there's a lot of questions on what else can you test, right? So what I'm going to do is I'll introduce you to Worksoft, what else we can test, and we'll talk about demos, and we'll show you demos of actually building and testing mainframe, Office apps, web applications, say custom web applications, and mobile. Basically, if we looked at the last year of partner tests and webinars we've done with customers, a lot of people ask, do you test X apps? And these were the top 4 that people talked about. So in today's environment, we know an end-to-end test spans multiple technologies. And the cool thing is it spans 30 years, sometimes even 40 years of technology. You've got the latest and greatest on the mobile. You've got the new, beautiful Fiori web-based applications. You've got classic web or custom applications, SAP GUI, Microsoft Office, all the way back to the mainframe and AS400. So in this webcast, we usually show you a lot of things around Fiori and SAP. So this time we're going to do the opposite. We're going to actually demo mainframe. We'll demo how to use like Microsoft Excel and get and put data in it. How do you test a custom web application? And then we'll show you how to test a mobile application. So I'm joined today with 2 great guys. I've got Jill. Jill's a senior solution architect, and the great thing is he has no programming skills. He is a hardcore accountant, if you don't know him, and an avid motorcyclist. Now, Eric Leesberg came to us from Microsoft, and he's a really smart guy. And so we gave him the cool demo of Microsoft Excel because he loves Microsoft, right? So this is our demo team. I'll augment and do the web. So in the first part, we'll talk about mainframe. Jill?
Thank you. Okay, brief history of Worksoft. Mainframe was first. It is it was our core product for the longest time, so it makes this probably one of the easiest of all interfaces, in my opinion, and you guys will see that since I don't have any programming skills whatsoever. I can build for pretty much the most sophisticated tests out there by simply using out-of-the-box pull-down menus and actions on pretty much every mainframe application out there. It all depends on the emulator. We do support a variety of emulators, and I'll show you that shortly. So the second bullet point there is just a little gargly goop, the technical stuff of what's the technology and how we actually connect to those particular green screens. So with that, I will show you how to do it.
Okay.
Ta-da! All right, so I'm on an AWS cloud over in Virginia. We do have all of our technologies scattered all over the world, like most architectures, most companies. And what you see here in front of you is, a AS400 mainframe environment. Familiar to you all, I'm sure, because it's been around for 125 years. So let's start with the demo, because there's really not much else to talk about here. Bottom line, AS400 is just all about positions. As you can see, I'm in row 6 down here, column 6, field 53, row 53. So it's all about positions, right? So every time I come in here and I just all of a sudden start typing, I hit the host key or a tab, and I'm on to the next field. And that's basically the navigation and all the actions you kind of need for working with a mainframe environment. So let me show you how that actually works with Worksoft Certify. I'm going to close this out. I've got a little demo here already prepared. I'll open that. Okay, here we go, test steps. So first step you see is to actually execute the login process, so I don't have to do it. You just saw me type away. So I'm going to go ahead and just run this, and then I'll explain exactly what I meant by the actions, inherent actions out of the box that we can simply use and test pretty much any AS400 or actually Unix as well. I forgot to mention that. So let's go ahead and just start it, and then we'll explain it as we go. Nice and easy. I'll step through it. The first one is always load the emulator itself. Number 1 step, not too difficult. You usually save your configuration depending on what machine, what IP, etc. The next step is basically 4,000 milliseconds per test step because mainframes typically run very fast. So so does Certify. So this is basically kind of a pause in between steps. So we're just going to step through it anyway for now. And okay, so now I even pause the process execution for 1 second. And I guess I could have skipped that step because we're just stepping through it. So anyway, next one is to verify that you're actually on the correct screen before you continue the test. That's what that step is. That is a system step. The next one is now input field. And you'll notice when you input, the next will be tab, input, input, and then the last one is host key. So as you can see, there's not very many actions here, input and press. And that's what we'll do, and we'll go into the core product. So type 2 in the next field. As you'll notice, we're down already at the field level. I guess it's column 20, row 7, or row 7, sorry. It's vice versa. See, I told you I wasn't very smart at this. Anyway, it's always ready for an action, and that's why you'll notice that step 2, step 3 is basically press or type, press, type, press, type, press. So there's really only 2 actions as you navigate through these screens. So what I like to do is once you have the first 2 steps, I just basically copy and paste, and I create my test that way and just go through my application. That is it, copy and paste. So I'm just going to go ahead and run this, and you'll see it run through the main screen with a log off, etc. So that's basically the execution, the basics of it. The test is pretty much finished. Remember, it ran pretty slow, so you guys can actually see it. This is the result. I'll close that. Let's go back into it. And we're almost done here. So let me show you how I did that. Again, step 2 is a simple type keys into that particular field. Well, what if I want to go somewhere else and type something instead of the default? And this is what I meant by the actions, the inherent actions that come out of the box from Worksoft Certify. You can pretty much do anything you want with the cursor itself. As you notice, press host key and input are there. Those are the most popular ones. But again, I can position it anywhere, and I can make sure that I'm on the actual right screen itself. And that's basically it. So there's not much to it. Locate the cursor. I can search text. I don't even have to learn the screen if I don't want to, but we do have that option if you would like. But again, out of the box, all you have to do is log in, or sorry, execute the executable to launch your particular green screen. And then you simply right-click, add a new step below or above, and navigate or press the host key, make sure that you're on the right screen. That's basically it. There's really not much to it. And myself, I like to, again, copy and paste these. You can just copy, bring it down to the end, paste it. That's it, because it's kind of repetitive. And then I just, let's see here, locate cursor, type keys. Instead of 1, I can just put 2, press the host key instead of the enter. I can, any variety of host key is available for me under the particular action itself. So a lot of flexibility, real simple to use. It works very well. And like I said, we've been doing it for 20 years. If you wanted to actually learn the particular screen itself, you're allowed to do that. But again, I've come across so many different applications that I never really have to learn this because of the inherent actions we do have out of the box. And let me just show you what that screen scraper is. It's basically learn the screen. And as you can see, it just learned the screen, which is basically rows and columns. And you can save that and pretty much manipulate the data as we just showed you, except you don't have to. Easy stuff. And that's basically it. Oh, and by the way, one more thing. We do support a bunch of emulators. Let me disconnect from the screen, tools, set the emulator to Brumba, Attachmate, IBM, which is one of my favorite ones, real easy to work with. They actually really are. Most of them are easy to work with. Blue Zone, and I think there's another one. I forgot what it was. But anyway, those are the ones that are out of the box that we support, and they're predominantly the major ones in the marketplace. That's it.
Thanks, Jill. So here are some actual resources. So if you're interested in learning more about mainframe testing, there's a white paper and there's a lot of articles on the customer portal, hence our question about getting to the customer portal. So that will point to what the actions are, which is host keys, so you can have a list of the actions and all the different things that can be done. So next, we're going to pass this over to Eric, and he's going to show us how to deal with Microsoft Office and Excel apps.
Thank you very much, Chris. Hello, everyone. I wanted to go through and show you how we're able to automate Microsoft Office. And this allows you to be able to do a lot of really interesting things that mean that you're able to go in and do not only testing of applications, and typically you would say, well, I don't normally have to test Excel, but often you have to automate reading data, writing data to and from Excel to be able to carry out a test. So whether that's test prep or at the end of a test, some cleanup, or maybe as part of a test, you're doing some automation to send the results as an email. I'm going to show you how you're able to take information, format it in Excel, be able to then paste that just like you would on your own keyboard, to copy and paste that into a Word document and then attach that to an Outlook email. And it's straightforward, very similar to what you saw with Jill using our patented object action framework, which allows you to be able to go in and pick step by step how you carry out the actions. So let me show you that. I'm just going to start up a new process. We'll call it MS Office. And let's say the first step is that we want to actually take maybe some record set information that we already have in the system, and we want to be able to turn that into an Excel sheet. So you do have the option to be able to actually export that information and pick out a record set that you might have in the system. For us, since we're going to be doing mobile later, we'll go ahead and pick a mobile record set that talks about some of the devices that we have, and we can look at that real quick and just see that it's got some tabular data in it that we're going to want to pull out. I'll go ahead and set that. I just want to write that out to a file. We'll call this the test, separated values file. And then we can simply set that this is going to be overwrite, and it'll use commas, and whether or not it'll put double quotes or nothing around text, and it'll use a header for that. Then once we've written that file out, we'll want to open that in Excel. So we'll create a new step, and this will use the Excel object application. And so it's important that you make sure that that Office application is enabled in your project so that it shows up. So you just have to go in your project, look at the applications and make sure MS Office is there and checked, and the help files talk about how to set that up. We're going to go ahead and then open up that spreadsheet. And because it's Excel, it knows what to do with comma-separated value files. So it'll pick that up. And then once we do that, we want to start carrying out some actions. So we can go ahead and execute these two steps to see what happens, just so we can verify that the record set's getting pushed out and then Excel's opening it up properly. So here we see that the file's opened and that we've got 5 columns that we want to format. And maybe the first thing we want to do is format that with auto fitting. So the nice thing is when you hold your Alt key down, you'll see that it allows you to be able to do format information, like Alt-H pulls up the format. So it gives you little hotkeys to let you know. So Alt-H-O and then an I is going to auto-fit my column. So if I want to do that same thing, I can do that here. I simply do a new step, and I'm going to type those same keys. And using an Alt key, I'm just going to pass H-O-I, and that's going to auto-format the fields for me. And then after that, I want to be able to make sure that I do that against a specific range. So I'm going to insert one more step below here where I pick the range. So I'm able to select a range, a cell, a row, a column, whatever I want. In this case, I'll select my first 5 columns. Once I've done that, I want to be able to then format that. So I'm going to copy these 2 steps, and this is where you start getting the speed of, as you build, you can build faster. And now once I've highlighted those specific steps, I want to go and just pick the rows. So I want to pick A1 through E5 on my spreadsheet, and I want to be able to format that to look a little nicer. So a different set of hotkeys will actually pull up my different table formats that I can go through. And then I'm able to do a simple send key that will allow me to pick those tables. So I can show you what that looks like. Alt H and T, and then I basically hit enter twice, and it's going to pick the table and format it for me. So I can do the same thing here. I want to just send some keys, and I'm going to just send 2 enter keystrokes. And what this does is picks that for me. So using a mixture of the automation built into Excel and some of our automation built in for the keyboard itself, we're able to carry out these kind of actions. The next step, of course, is we want to take this information now that it's nicely formatted, and we want to paste this somewhere else. So we're going to take and paste this step, and this is going to be to simply take our information and copy it out of the into the clipboard. And once we've done that, and I'll reverse the order so you have a nice drag and drop capability, of course, to get your steps in proper order. We now have that information stored in our clipboard. So now we're going to open up a new Office document. So again, we can just insert a step below. And this time, instead of working with Excel, we're going to work with Word. We're just going to be creating a new document. And in that document, we're going to paste our results. And when we go to do that paste, we're just going to use a similar action to what we did here before. And this is where, as you're working with automation, you'll learn that there's certain things that are able to be automated more readily with send keys from the application, and other times more readily with just the send keys for the operating system. And the Control V is just a little caret. And then lastly, once we've got that in there, we want to target it, since it's now in a new application that specifically we're working with Word. So we want to make sure that Word is in the window that we're pasting to. And then we want to save that result for Word. So we'll take this last Office step for Word. And we're going to make that then a save action. So we'll save this document, and we'll call this our temp test.docx. So now we've saved the information, and then to be really fancy, we want to go ahead and send that off. So we can just insert another step, just like we've been doing, and instead of using Office Word, we're going to now use Outlook. So we can just verify that Outlook's open. If it's already open, great. If not, it'll go ahead and log us in. And then one final step here will be to go ahead and send that message. So I'll pick send it to myself, and set a couple details about the message. This will be mobile device tests as the subject. I can copy and blind copy people. Here I'll go ahead and attach the document. I could attach a couple different documents. If you want to get really fancy, you can even use the automation tricks that Chris is about to show you in the next step to be able to automate not just sending email this way, but even sending email through, say, a web client like Outlook or Gmail, and be able to dynamically create the body of the message. Or you can use variables to be able to concatenate a custom message. The format can also be customized, so you can even have a custom body to your message. In this case, I'll just put in some static text saying, see attached device list to test. So with that, I've gone through and used our object action framework in a traditional way that we've used for many years that the product's been around to be able to build out this test. I'll go ahead and run it. Let me close my former copy that I had running. And it summarizes what it's about to do. So I'll hit run, and I put a little bit of a delay just so you're able to see what happens, because it flies pretty fast and sometimes timing can be an issue. So I've just set it to run with 1 second between steps. You can see it's formatted and auto-sized and copied the Excel sheet into the clipboard. It's now launching Word, where it'll paste that formatted device information and save it. And then lastly, it's going to open up Outlook and send it. Because that last Outlook step is not visual, until we go look at Outlook, we can of course see a summary of everything it carried out, which it did for us dutifully and in a very quick number of steps and seconds here, about 12, 13 seconds. And I can go look at my email, and I can see that I have one email message, and I have my document devices attached. So it's that easy to be able to automate not just Word, Excel, and Outlook like I've shown, but you can also automate PowerPoint. There's also various options and steps in the tool itself that allow you to be able to automate the menu. So when you get into the specifics of automating Office itself, you'll see that there's plenty of additional steps that you'll be able to take action on to be able to do any number of sort of actions on not just the original objects, but even Office itself to send mouse clicks, select items in the ribbon, select the menu, change the windows to minimize or maximize. So you can basically carry out full automation just like you were an actual user at the keyboard using these products, which is pretty powerful. I'll just highlight a couple resources. As was mentioned before, the customer portal is very helpful. That's where we have a lot of our dynamic articles. A number of these I've written actually, and that demo I just showed you is going to be posted as an additional technical article here shortly. But not only can you get these kind of how-to articles, but we have reference tables for all of our interfaces, whether it's mainframe or Office or the like, that you can quickly pull up our set of actions and be able to see all the different object action paradigms that you can take advantage of. Thanks. Back to you, Chris.
Thanks, Eric. So what I'm going to show now is testing custom web applications. And we get this question quite a bit. People ask, hey, can I test any custom application? I know you have XF definitions for Fiori and Salesforce and Hybris and SuccessFactors and Ariba and Concur and on and on and on and on. But a lot of times people say, hey, I just have a custom app that is one of the steps in my workflow. It's something the company wrote, and so you need to test that. So I'm going to show you two ways to approach that. One is with Capture, you can actually activate in XPath mode, which means we kind of bypass definitions and just use XPath to create the test, which will be very similar to the way Selenium works. Right? Selenium does an XPath at each part of the application. It clicks the buttons and moves on. And then the second one, I'll show you what happens when we have an XF definition. So I actually have an application called Management Studio. It's written in Angular 2. So it's written on a JavaScript framework. And I'm going to test it inside of Chrome so you can see how that works, because we find that's very popular with people these days. Now, kind of the difference is with the first demo, we'll see that you don't need an XF or a config. We'll set the factory defaults, so we'll override it to go very XPath. And it should just work for any application. The factory config works really well for HTML, and sometimes it doesn't do good job objects on JavaScript frameworks like Angular 2, so I'll activate the XPath. Now, the trick is each step is an XPath. You don't have advanced table actions, so it may be a little brittle, but in many, many cases, it will work fine for what you need to do. The second time, I'll show you, it'll actually create the object action framework for you automatically, and we'll create all the objects, we'll create the links, you'll get advanced table actions and button actions and that, so we'll see the differences between them. So I'm going to come over here to my desktop, and I'm going to start Chrome. I'll go over to my application. So I have this thing called Management Studio. This is an Angular 2 application itself, right? So I have Capture running here. So if I look at Capture, I've got the web plugin enabled, and then in my HTML options, you'll notice something interesting. I have the factory config and definition, but the trick is I have my latency set for 0. So this means that it's going to immediately default to XPath. If I make this like 5 seconds, or something larger than 0, what will happen is it will try to look for a definition, and if it doesn't find one by parsing the HTML and the JavaScript, it'll actually fall to XPath. So if I set it to 0, I'll force it to XPath. So I'm going to do a right click and say begin capture. And so Capture's loading and configuring, and I'll start my recording. And I'll click the login button. And so the steps will be capturing at the bottom. I'm going to go add a user. So make last one at worksoft.com, set a password. and then I'll click a radius button, and I'll click add. So the steps are recording in the background. You know, I can click and highlight the last. I can go to the pencil. That'll allow me to edit. So technically that's in a table. I'll click the delete button and remove the user. So I basically added and removed a user, and all the actions are contained. So I did this with standalone capture, so I'll just save this out. I'm going to call this XPath demo. How about the other XPath? And I'll save it. So now what I have is I have a file saved to disk, and I can import it into Certify. So I'll get out of here. I'm going to come over to Certify. So most of you are very familiar with Certify and Capture. So I'm just showing you a little bit of new tricks. So I'm going to come over to my sandbox to where I have my tests. And I've got my Management Studio. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to import a capture file to create the test. So there's my XPath demo file I just created. I'm going to call this demo 3, and I'm going to put it into my Management Studio application. Okay, it imports, and now I have a test created. Now what we'll see is this looks a little bit different. So if I drag this over and look at the steps, you'll see there's some div tags and label tags. So the test looks a little bit different than if it was an object action framework-based one with an XF. So first thing we do is, you know, password fields automatically get added, but we have to put the passwords back in. So we go fix those. Okay. So now this test, what we'll see looks a little bit different. So I've got to input into edit boxes here. So if I actually look at the edit object, what we'll see is it's actually showing you XPath into all the items, right? So very classic, here's an XPath to find the input field. So that's what this test is doing. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go add a step at the beginning. This is going to go launch my browser in that because thought it'd be easier to do that quickly. So what I've got is an execute process, and I already have a process defined that is going to open up the browser and set my configuration, and we'll talk about that specifically. What did I do for an Angular 2 app? So load the Chrome with the factory config. Okay. So I'll save this, and then I'll walk through it, and I'll step through and show you what my sub-process does. Okay. So we'll start, and I'll start stepping through. So I'll go into that sub-process I added. So what we see in the sub-process is it's going to load the Chrome, and then set some options. Okay. So because I'm in Chrome, I have my busy check set off. And that's because this is an Angular 2 app with a JavaScript engine, and the JavaScript is kind of always running. I set my configuration, and I'm using send keys as input. Okay. And what the send keys does is it will change the actions to do a send key. The reason is a JavaScript framework needs the keys to come into the JavaScript engine, so setting the send keys does that for me. Okay? And then when I'll come back in is I'll start seeing my actual application running. So now I've got my activity, and we'll see as I step through the send keys, it's sending the data. I'll click the login button, okay, and see this left click on the div link. So that div link is actually this add user over here. So I don't see a button because it's an XPath. It's actually seeing the div link to it, right? So I go in, and you'll notice all the actions are working. They're playing back fine into the input field. It's just playing back kind of the core XPath. And this is how a lot of testing frameworks work. We think about Selenium and those guys. What they do is they build XPaths. They can click a link on a table. They can click a span. And they can click the button, and it works. So technically, my test case played back, and it worked. My maximize button didn't work. Not worried about that. The test played back perfectly. So here's the deal. I've created a test, and I've asked Capture over here, when it does it, to kind of do a little trick and default to XPath, because I know that I don't have a factory config or a definition file for it. Okay, but this test may be a little brittle, but it'll probably get you past a lot of what you need to do. Now, the one thing in my application is I do have a table here, and so if I needed to go look in the table for different things, I would need a table action. So that's where the concept of configs and definitions come in. When you're working with an application and you actually want to do some advanced things like find tables and advanced menus where there's drop-down slides to the right, that's where the power of the Object Action Framework comes in. So if I wanted to do this test and I happen to have an Object Action Framework or actually a config file and definition set up for Angular 2 for this application. So I'm going to go create a new test case, and I'm going to show what that looks like. So I'm going to say new process from Capture. Okay, so Capture is running. So in this case, I started it from Certify. So what we'll see is the options are to use my config and definition and a 5-second pause before I call to XPath. And so that means everything will resolve, obviously, within 5 seconds. So what I can do now is my Capture is running. So I'm going to go work through the application. Now, this test is going to look a little bit different. I interact with the application the same way. And then what we'll see is I'll have a little more difference in the descriptions of my actions. Click the Add button. I'll say first one, last one, last one. You'll notice every time I type, I pause talking. I just type better when I'm not talking, right? So I've got my data. I'll click my Add button. Now, the user's there. I'm going to click into the email. I'm going to click over to the delete or the edit, and then I'll delete the user. Okay. So I've captured all my steps. So if I end my capture here, it allows me to add this. So I'll call this demo 5, and it imports. So now I've got this table of users here. So I'm going to show you how to, because I've got a clean definitions of the objects, how to use the table action to go find that user I added in this table. Okay. So I'll come over to Certify. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go open up my test. Slide this over so I have a little more working space. Now, same thing happened. First thing, all my passwords I need to go uncomment and put back in. Okay, that's easy enough. Everybody's familiar with that. Okay, so now, if we look at my options, I have input first into the first name edit field, the last name edit box, right? So I actually have objects defined instead of XPath like I did in the other one. Okay, and then a click where I actually clicked into the user admin table and it did a select cell. What I want to do is I'm going to change this to a find advanced, because what I want to do is actually go get the row that I added the user to. So I'm going to say, give me the row. So that's my variable. And then I'll make this a little bit wider so it's easier to see. Instead of doing the column number, I'm going to say, give me the column name. It was called email. And what I want to do in the email column is I want to go look for last one at worksoft.com. Okay? So I now can say, look for the email of last one at worksoft.com. So I'm using a table action to go find the user I added, that last one at worksoft.com, right? And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and change the edit button. So I had a click on the cell here, but it clicked row 3. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make that my variable now. So I'm going to say, give me the row that I found. So dynamically at runtime, no matter where the email is in the table, I'll go find it and click the edit and work with the rest of the work. Now, same thing's going to happen here. I'm going to go insert a line above, and in this case, I'm going to go put a system action. Okay, so I cheated, and instead of you watching me type everything, I'm going to go through and do my system action, and I'm going to say execution, and say execute a process. And I've created a process or a sub-process that will load my Chrome with the Management Studio configuration, because that's a pretty good reusable process there. So now let's see what this test looks like. Now remember, my action is going to look different because I actually see, it's edit, first name edit box, last name edit box, all those things instead of simply XPath into there. And then this test is going to be a little more, I would say, durable, because what it's going to allow me to do is no matter where the table is or how it's defined, I'll find the rows in the table. Okay. So my first step was to load the browser. My second step is to turn the busy check off because I'm in Chrome with Angular 2 JavaScript engine running. I'll load my definition, and then I'll activate send keys. And that send keys is important with these JavaScript frameworks. So now if I go through, what I'll see is it enters the username, enters the password, it did a left click on the login button, okay, and then we can see up here, this add button is this click add push button here. So we'll step through, and what we'll notice is the objects have nice names to them. That makes it easy to maintain. If something ever changes with the first name field or the email, if it changes or moves on the page, it's fine because we'll find it anywhere it is. We see each checkbox is labeled as a different checkbox for Analyze versus Execution Manager. We'll click the button, and then my find row action here will say, okay, look in this table and find last one at worksoft.com, find my email address, and go click that pencil to edit and then delete it. So this is an example of testing just an Angular 2, just a custom app with Certify. Now the difference is I showed you two modes. Okay, so I'll go back over that. I showed you how to do that with an XPath, and I showed you how to do it if you have a definition. So quite honestly, if you have a custom application, your factory config will probably work well if it's standard HTML. When you get into some of the JavaScript frameworks and it renders differently, those things you may need to just follow the XPath. And if you don't have complex tables and that to work with, you're just entering data and moving on, it'll probably work just fine. You can just add that to your end-to-end test. Now, when it comes to very complex, you need table actions and finds, you actually need definition and config. Now, some people say, well, how do I get a definition and config? Some of them we write for our custom app, and I mean, we write the ones for all these package apps. We can help you write yours through consulting or consulting as classes where they can teach you how to write the XFs and config. So at this point, I'm going to pass it over to Eric. Oh, sorry, my resources. So here's all my resources. So there's a ton of information on the extensibility framework, how to use XFs, how to get them, where you download them in the customer portal, and then what you can actually do with them. There's a lot of how-to articles, and then there's e-learning on using this. So tons of information out there. Consultancy also has classes on how to build your XF definitions and so forth. So at this point, I'm going to pass it over to Eric, and he's going to show you mobile. So what you'll notice is we're moving in time. We started with the oldest technologies of mainframe. We then went to fat clients of Office and Excel. I showed you very contemporary Angular 2 custom web apps. And now Eric's the really, really smart guy, and he's going to show you the cool mobile stuff.
Thanks, Chris. So let me go through some of the details about how we're able to test mobile applications. And this is actually something we've been doing for a number of years. We're on kind of our third generation of mobile testing, where we began with automating mobile testing for Keynote Device Anywhere applications, now purchased by another company. And then Perfecto Mobile was our next platform. And now our latest and greatest platform is Test, which allows us to be able to even plug devices directly into your laptop or desktop to be able to just test with your own mobile devices at your desk. And then as you want to, you can extend those devices to running in the lab or in an on-premise data center and create a large device cabinet. And then if you don't need that, or you want to move on to testing a wide variety of devices, you can even go to the cloud. And all of these partners of ours have a number of and range of devices that can run in their clouds around the globe for being able to get wide coverage across device types, form factors, and versions of operating systems. So we're able to do a mix and match, which is great because you still use the same sort of typical capture and live touch and object action framework and narrative that you're familiar with, where you can read the test steps and be able to document that and all the great things you can do and analyze. And this is an example of how we have this structured in our own environment. So we have our certified clients that are talking to our database. In this case, this will be running here on my laptop, and then I'm connecting through a VPN connection to just a Windows computer. Can be a Windows or a Mac machine with Test that runs the device lab, where we've got a website that manages the devices and gives us the ability to reserve those and be able to define who gets them and which teams work on them. And that way we have good sharing and scheduling for those devices, and can decide whether we want to upgrade the operating systems automatically or lock them at certain levels and make sure certain versions of the application are rolled out in a consistent manner. And so all of these parts and pieces can run on-prem or in the cloud or a mixture, as long as you can make the network connection. So this makes it for a very flexible architecture for your teams, depending on where they are, or no matter where they are on the planet. So let me start by going into Certify and showing you some of the places where you configure the mobile interface. First, you'll see that there's a mobile section, and this goes all the way back to 903, but the latest version of the mobile interface is packaged with the new Certify 10.02, and you'll see that it includes all the different options for those device partners that we talked about. And so I'm pointing just at one of my application servers that has some devices on it that I can connect to. If I want to, I can even see what that looks like through a web browser. So I have the ability to log in and actually see the devices in this nice sort of graphical friendly way, or in a list view to see which ones are available and which ones I want to work on as far as testing. So this is where I can pick devices. I can roll out certain versions of my applications out to those devices, so I can keep a whole library of all my IPA and my APK files, which are my iOS, my Android packages that are going to get pushed out to my devices. So their maintenance is very nice through this web application. So once that's all configured, I can just connect to that. So I can go into Interface Learn for mobile. And this allows me, just like with Mainframe Learn and all the other learns you've learned about today, you can also then learn and connect to mobile devices. So it basically gives you an ability to get into the device directly and be able to start working with those devices. So we can see here those 4 devices that are plugged in and ready for me to connect to. And before I do that, let me show you going in and capturing a small test of an application that's running on the device, an actual full integrated application. So I'm going to say a new process capture, and I could use live touch as well. It'll go ahead and let me know that it's running. A little trick here, I can drag this down to my taskbar so that I have it easily accessible. Make sure the options are turned on so that I can capture mobile. So just like you can capture web applications, as Chris just showed you, or SAP, SAP GUI applications, we can capture mobile. We'll go ahead and name some things we're doing. So we're going to be connecting, and then we're going to be opening and logging into one of the applications, and a small banking sort of sample application. And this will give me some nice encapsulated steps that I'm walking through. And I noticed here that, let's say I want to start with an iOS device. I can either just pick that and connect and find it that way, or I can just type in the device name and number here. So I'll go ahead and put in a 10 for our device. And as I go along, it's picking up these steps that I'm carrying out. So capture is working away. It may not always pop up for the mobile interface with the details as it goes step by step, but we'll see that here when it saves the capture. And then I can either scroll around and use my mouse to find the application, or I can launch it directly. by searching for it. And when I run it this way, I want to say that it's instrumented, and this helps it to get some richer information about the objects on the screen, which just makes it more automatable and well-behaved and maintainable. So that's true for any of the applications that may be installed on the device itself, native applications or hybrid. And then lastly, I was going to log in. So this sample application makes it real easy. It gives me the hint. Too bad all the banking sites out there don't just give out people's passwords that way. We'll go ahead and log in. And we can see the results here of making a payment. So I'll use this as a chance to say I'm changing from connecting and opening and logging in to now I'm going to make a payment as another named activity. And I'll go in here and just type in the basic details about myself. I have the most memorable phone number ever. And we'll keep this small. Just need a quick infusion of cash here, and we'll pick where I'm located today, but we can scroll and support all of that to be able to get to the specific thing that we need to get to by swiping. And then I can do the same sort of shortcut key actions like taking a screenshot, or I can make a comment. Note the balance changed. And then I can finish off my process by logging out, closing, and disconnecting. So I'll log out. I'll go ahead and close the application, although I don't need to do that because it'll always restart it, but it's just safe to clean things up. Leave it the way you left it, and we'll disconnect. And now we basically carried out all the steps that we need to capture. And that capture, it'll associate the appropriate steps with the right devices for our mobile interface. And I'll just call this the mobile Xperia test Arabank app test. And we can see here that it's created that master process for me and all the sub processes based on those activity names that I created. And we can see here that it's got the steps. It's connecting to the device, making the payment, capturing the screen, noting that the balance changed, logging out, disconnecting. So I can do the same sort of things I might need to do if I need to be able to adjust things, move things around. I can do that. For now, though, let me just show you that it works as is. Run this. And because our mobile window is smaller than a full screen web or mainframe or office type of window, we can actually have the test steps running alongside so we can see exactly what it's doing as it goes along here. So this is kind of handy, just like a manual tester might look at their manual test steps to carry these things out. You can actually see how Certify is dutifully looking at each of its steps and carrying them out on your behalf much faster than you could. So here it is, finding that application, logging in, and doing all the things that I carried out. And of course, all the great things in Certify where you can go and parameterize and turn these into variables and drive these with data are supported. In fact, the common question is, well, what if I want to be able to test an Android device? We just captured an iOS device. Do I have to start all over again? Well, the great thing is we actually support shared test steps where you can have the same test being used across multiple devices. So the way we're able to do that is taking this same test that we have already built, we can actually change the device number. In this case, our device number is going to be a 6 for our Android Nexus phone. And in that case, if we want to support being able to run the same test, all we have to do is execute it with that new device number and see what happens. So I'm going to start, and I'm just going to let it run. And as it runs, we'll notice that based on the application name and logins, if those differ, you can use a record set to drive those. And that was that record set I showed you in the Office demo. So it's able to allow you to provide dynamic data for the app to launch depending on the version of the operating system or the company. And we'll notice here that actually the names are the same for the app, so it launched the same way, but now it's on that company step and it's having trouble finding the username field because in Android they have a slightly different name for it. The great thing is you can fix these steps without ever having to leave the environment or even the execution process. In fact, here I can go and edit. It'll go and try and find that form again, and it'll struggle and say, yeah, I really can't find that form. I leave it up to you to do that. I can see it's looking for a placeholder called username, but it turns out in Android, it's got a different way of labeling things. So all I have to do is use my little live touch kind of capability here for edit object. Control click on that, and it's now added a new tab for Android where it's going to use the ID as username text field instead of for iOS where it was placeholder of username. So now we've got the same step in the test that's able to drive both. And in fact, I can go ahead and edit the next object and do the same thing. And what you'll find are the text boxes typically have different names, but the buttons, they're just looking at some text on the button. So as long as the buttons in the different devices have the same names, those steps will actually work just fine. So I'm just going to highlight these two to just give you a sense of how this works. And I'll go ahead and just set the execution pointer back, and I'll go ahead and click run. And what you'll see is it actually now is able to type in those steps. So now this test will work for either Android or iOS, phone or tablet form factor. And then of course, as it reaches this step, we'll finish the process out by editing the rest. But I won't show you that due to time. What I will show you is if you want to turn this into a set of tests that can run across all 4 devices, I've done that here. Let me just show you what that looks like. So that same record set that I used earlier in the Office application is tied to my test. And if I want to go look at that, I'll see that it's just a small list of devices. On my laptop, if I'm doing a laptop test locally, or if I'm plugged into the devices sitting in my network closet, I can see those device numbers, what kind of form factors they are, and so it can just run through this test over and over again on my behalf. And now I don't even have to go through and do any of the work to be able to work with this. So what this allows me to do is be able to take this information and be able to execute this over and over again and not have to worry about carrying it out. So now this test will loop over and over again and run through this same set of tests that we saw earlier. Let me give you some resources as this runs in the background. We've got a deck that I've put together on this topic since mobile's pretty popular. A lot of Certify customers are looking to expand, and partners are looking to expand into the mobile testing space to get true end-to-end test coverage. So we've got a demo of this, also some setup instructions, and you can go to both the experitest.com and worksoft.com portal and website to be able to learn more about the available actions. Thanks. Back to you, Chris and Heather.
So thanks, Eric. That's actually really interesting. The mobile interface objects are much more intelligent. They have an extra dimension to them. We understand the differences between iOS and Android and different operating systems. That's super, super cool. So what else can you test with Certify? We've shown you some things. Here's a list of all the things that we have customers testing. And there's actually more than that when people have their own custom XF definitions out there. But there's hundreds of different apps and systems that people test and work on every day, from IX to Silverlight to SAP transactions to Oracle to EBS to all sorts of different applications out there. So these lists are available out there, so you can see, but what you'll figure out is pretty much we can test anything we need to complete those end-to-end test cases.